you can scream and laugh, but you can't laugh and scream, like, you know what I mean?
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about the middle ear and its limitations. Did you know that you were limited by your ear? What? Yeah, it's true. You are. You're actually, for a number of reasons. Your ear is band limited because it's mechanical. There's all sorts of things that you have problems with your ear. Well, your ear the basilar membrane is the reason why it's band limited. But anyways, we're going to talk about the middle ear and how it affects your hearing. So here we have a picture of an ear. Da-da-da. And we have talked about this. You have sort of an idea of what's going on here. It goes through specifically the middle ear. Maybe that's what this video will be called. Middle ear and its limitations or whatever. You can only hear so loud. Something really clever title type deal. But anyways, it comes in your auditory canal. It hits your tympanic membrane, aka your eardrum. Your eardrum has to do this. First sign of a weakness in the system. It's mechanical. It can only move so fast. So if we have something coming in here that's too fast, your eardrum can't, go back and forth fast enough. We've got an issue. So that's the thing. But right now, it served us pretty well. So so there's going to be something with this movement here. And then these guys, not only does this thing have to move back and forth, but it moves this guy, which moves this guy, which moves this guy. That moves the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, or the malleus, inkeys, and stapes. They're called the Three Ossicles. And what happens is they have to amplify the sound because it's got to move this liquid in your cochlea, and liquid is not the easiest thing to move. It amplifies it, I believe, 22 times, and then you get the sound in your ear, and a whole bunch more stuff happens. But this is what we're really concerned with. Even the liquid itself, though, that's got to move too. But over here, we have this. So if our eardrum cannot move that fast, we cannot hear that loud. It's pretty much that simple. It cannot pick up enough information. So what happens? What are you talking about? This is just true of mechanical things in general. It will average out. It'll go as fast as it could go, but if it can't go any faster, it's just simply not going to go any faster. If it can't go any further, it just simply isn't going to go that far. If it does, it'll break. So I have here a drum loop. You're gonna run into this. You're gonna become very familiar with your friend compression later on. But this is sort of our first run-in with this thing we call compression. And to do this one, I better make sure the limiter they stick on here by default is off. And so some people will ask me, why do you still leave that on there? Well, I want my setup to look like a new person's setup when they come on. And now I'm pretty okay at remembering it's still there. Sometimes it still gets me, but I have a few special settings because you might be going, how are you zooming in that far? You have to turn your pulse per quarter note up to 960. So you go into your files, it's one of these menus up here, and you do it, okay? So I'm not going to be explaining how to do that in this video. Just for now, I can magically zoom in farther than you usually can. If I did this with Pro Tools, I'd be able to zoom in way farther. I don't know why I'm not doing it in Pro Tools. But anyways, what the deal is we have here a drum loop. This is what your drum loop sounds like. And you notice here that we have, it's compressing my signal right here. It shouldn't be peaking. What a strange phenomena. Oh, it's too loud. That's what the deal is. I turned it up. Okay. So we have our signal here, right? And it's going through, if we were to look at this through a machine analyzer plugin thing, we could see that we have peaks here, right? We got these magical peaks. And if we zoom it, I wonder how far we could zoom in like this. Not very far. We're going to use this. So we have these moments right here. This is a very, very, very fast moment. This is not some wimpy small moment. This is a super duper fast moment. As a result, your ear simply cannot move that big that fast. And so what happens is when these things get louder, when short things get louder that your ear literally cannot do, natural compression will occur where simply the tops are just chopped off because your ear is not going to move that fast. It's just simply life. It's just dynamically, it cannot go back and forth that big, that fast. And so as a result, it's not a frequency issue because the frequencies are still there. It's just it's an issue of it moving back and forth big enough. It just can't do it. So what happens is what your ear does is it averages things out. We even have a value that that approximates this more or less. It's called RMS. Root means square. It's a type of amplitude measurement, and you will see meters that are RMS meters, and people like to use RMS meters because they are more closely associated with your ear. However, there's this thing called clipping, which I'm not explaining clipping in this video. I'm assuming you know what clipping is. Then you don't want to clip. You don't want it to go into your red. And so you want to watch with peaking meters, but at the same time, when you're mixing, you're going to get a more true value of how loud something is based on RMS meters because of this, because your ear doesn't hear this. If we were to turn the volume up on this, so listen to it. I want you to, let's just sacrifice part of this and just look at one chunk. So, right, it's actually happening. That's actually a little too fast. That'll mess up my experiment here. So, and we'll start over here. So that's what we got. As I turn it up, you will notice that it does not get any louder. It's just not going to. It's just too fast. It's peaking too high compared to the rest of this. It's just too fast. What changes if you listen is there's this one part, this part right here, this part stays the same for the most part. It gets a little louder, but for the most part, it stays the same. And I think even the little louder that I think I'm hearing is just perceptually because I think I'm turning a volume knob. So my brain has an issue with me turning in a volume knob and having something not get louder. So I think that's more of it. But it's really quite steady. The rest of it's getting louder. The rest of it, our average volume, as these guys increase, it's getting louder. Now, it's also, what else is happening is it's hitting a compressor. And we haven't talked about compression, but if I were to turn that up any louder, it would peak. So I have to compress it if I want it to get louder. Like, that's just the way things are. I have to chop off these peaks and turn everything else up in order to get this louder. We're going to talk about how to hear that later on. But right now, that's the point. It's things that are this transient, like over here, if we did it to this guy's really fast. So if you listen to his attack, just his first little bit, I'm asking a lot of you kind of, I suggest you practice this. I suggest you just get out a bunch of drum hits and spend time. Do it with the noise exercise I gave you. Maybe I'll make another video on that. Is you just do it and listen to the very, very attacks. Like this actual part of the sample, this very, very short part is really unique to the sample. We're going to talk about it later, but it's called the chiff. And the chiff is a really important deal. So as we play it and we turn it up, you'll notice that everything else turns up. This part's happening so darn fast, we can't hear these peaks. Our ears will chop off these extraneously long parts simply because the mechanical motion can't handle it. I'm stopping it because if I play it over and over and over, you're gaining average. That's not a good thing. We don't want that. You hear everything else coming up? Let's do that again. So there it is. So this beginning part hardly changes at all, if at any. And this is a very important thing for you to know about. It's one thing that producers make a big deal about. They'll talk about preserving. This is also called the transient. A transient is simply just a spike or a moment of excitement. It's a spike in audio because we look at it and we're like, oh, look, that's the spike. But in reality, this is not what sound looks like. So calling it a spike is just came from the visual side of things. This is not at all what sound does in reality, though. It does not go up and down through your room like that. That's just false. So yeah, that is some of the limitations. This is just serving as an introduction to this idea, to this concept. It's going to start bringing things like compression way more usable. I'm pretty excited to talk about this. Practice listening. Listen for this. Really get good at hearing the different stages of your waveform. And if you do that exercise, you know what? I'm going to do a separate video on this because it's important. If you do that exercise with the hearing exercise, the frequency one, you'll be able to pick out parts of the spectrum. Because you got to remember, I might blow your mind right now. Maybe I won't. Maybe you've thought of this. Maybe you're aware of this. But this moment is a broadband spectrum. So if you don't know, I never covered that term specifically in my sound and synth series, but go look it up. You just look up the video on bandwidth and then apply the term broad, which just means a big bandwidth, meaning a lot of frequencies. And then look up spectrum, the spectrum video, look up frequencies and that kind of a thing. That's all covered in my SoundSynth Basics, so that sentence should make more or less sense. But what I'm saying here is this beginning little shift part is essentially noise, which is what you have been practicing listening to. At least you should be. If you're not doing that, then you are like going to miss out on a lot of stuff I'm going to talk about here. But well, I mean, in the series in general, this allows you to hear, if you listen to it, each sound has different parts of a spectrum happening at a moment at different amplitudes. And this is a great example of one where there's noise. So you have a very large brush of sound, but it's not just like any kind of noise. Like there's a pattern to this noise. It's not like pink noise or white noise where it's equal intensity, la, la, la. There are nodes and all sorts of interesting ideas that come into play here when it comes to acoustically. So yeah, and then over here we have essentially more noise, but it's a different type of noise. Like things are beginning to layer out, and this is just drum hits are really peculiar in the kind of way they work. So it's really kind of a strange thing to hear the frequency content in combination with this concept of dynamics, and we're separating the two out where it's like, oh, frequency, but frequency plays a role in the way we perceive dynamics as well, because it's kind of a strange deal. Because we don't hear frequencies equally, we're more sensitive to 1K. And so this acts also, drums sort of act as a natural filter against our ear, where drums will naturally enhance the mids when they're that loud. But remember, your frequency spectrum gets louder as a whole when you turn everything up. You will be able to perceive all frequencies more evenly. So the transient will sound full because it's that loud, but it happens so friggin' fast, you're mechanically limited. And then it'll apply almost like an EQ effect to the second part where it's softer, and the highs and mids may disappear some unless it's got a high, unless you're using a sample with a lot of highs in it. And then the mids will pop out more just naturally, just because it's softer than your transient. So when you're compressing your drums, you are affecting this, but that would actually happen naturally. If you're hearing a natural, actual drum set being played, where they don't have all this crazy mumbo jumbo stuff going on, that's what's going to happen. You're naturally, as things die out, the mids will last a little longer than everything else perceptually. And so it's just a strange deal. So anyways, that's some of the ear and its limitations. If that last bit went like right over your head, don't worry about it. We haven't even gotten to compression. We're not even done with the ear. But I want to give you, this pretty usable information like right out of the get-go. Like as soon as you know about this, you can begin to use it in your mixes and be aware of it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe. Follow me. Oh, so not follow me. What is it? Support me. Support me on Patreon. I've got a Patreon. And have a blessed day. And I'm not attached. There we go. You notice it slowly changes. Kind of an interesting idea. We could make it randomized spectrally.